Hey all, sorry if I sound a little different this time. At the time of recording, I was sick with something. It was probably the flu, but it wasn't serious enough to waste the time of healthcare workers checking if it was Rona, and that's why I might sound slightly different. Okay? Okay. I always wanted to do something for Star Wars Day, but it always creeped up on me. But by happenstance, I breezed through this script in mid-April and realized, oh hey, I could do this for May 4th. So I'm a happy Lily. Anyway, here's a Star Wars. Star Wars has been going through something of an identity crisis. The most recent slate of movies have generally been little more than pandering fan service, trying to stoke nostalgia by being a walking reference book, and that's not entirely unwarranted. The Star Wars fan base has generally wanted Star Wars to be a big walking reference book for a long time, at least until rather recently. The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett are two shows that are all about taking a walking tour through Star Wars set pieces and characters. There's a scene in the Book of Boba Fett that has Ahsoka talking to Luke, which looks and sounds like it was ripped directly out of someone's fanfic, and not just because they had to digitally deepfake Luke's voice, so it sounds completely unnatural to the conversation and like something an amateur fangirl edited together for YouTube. The desire for fan service, to rewind our psyches to happier days when Star Wars was simple and pure and brand new and so were we, has driven the backlash to a lot of Star Wars properties that would have otherwise been very well received under any other circumstances. It's the primary drive behind the backlash to the prequel trilogy, in that it was a new set of stories rather than being reminiscent of the old ones. Clone Wars actually got this at first for introducing a new female character, which took a while for people to warm up to, not because she was a bad character, but because we had to wait for The Force Unleashed to come out before women-hating rageaholic Star Wars fans got distracted by the new shiny thing to complain about. You ready for that cycle to happen again? I know I am. I was complaining about pandering fan service a long time ago, and it seems that everyone else is starting to get as annoyed with it as I am. Ironically, around the time Hayden Christensen is set to return to Star Wars, what a coincidence that surely isn't reflective of anything at all. But the question is, how do you make Star Wars interesting again? Everyone has different ideas about this. First you'll probably hear is a story about a non-Force sensitive, specifically one that doesn't even mention the Force or the Jedi at all. But the problem there is that it just turns Star Wars into every single grimy science fiction series in existence. Like, that's Star Trek, is what you're looking for. And again, I get why people want that. Everyone wants Batman, or at least everyone thinks they want Batman. They want a badass normal. They don't want to be reminded about the space wizard ninjas, because that reminds them they're watching a series for children. It turns Star Wars into a bog-standard cyberpunk story that you can then turn around and pretend is nuanced because the protagonists say fuck a lot. And I'm not saying that if you want a story about a non-Force sensitive like a smuggler or a bounty hunter that you're a 14-year-old pretending to be a nihilist. I'm just saying...
You have no vision.
So with all the pandering fan service and even concepts like bounty hunters and stormtroopers being driven into the ground, how do we cover new and interesting ground in a Star Wars? Well, the answer has always been staring Star Wars straight in the face. Among pre-Disney canon, the most interesting thing they have ever done was decouple the dark side of the Force from evil and decouple the light side of the Force from good, turning both of them into things that can be used for either, in the same vein that immersing yourself in anger and only anger can turn a person into a truly monstrous human being. Detaching yourself from all emotion and passion entirely turns you into an unfeeling machine with no ability to truly empathize with other people. And the inherent problem with the dark side as it existed before this, and as it does in Disney canon, is that it operates on one intensely flawed principle, that justified human emotions can turn a good person evil. It suggests that anger itself is the problem and not a symptom of something else. It's perfectly reasonable to be angry at something that has actively made you angry, like for example oppressive regimes, which Star Wars is more than familiar with. People get angry at them all the time, and lo and behold, there is an army of centrist mouthpieces ready to decry them as terrible evil people for not simply suffering in silence. It's perfectly reasonable to hate someone who has wronged you in some way and for whom has not seen proper justice. And the status quo of Star Wars has always put the onus on the victims to forgive and not the perpetrator to submit to justice. The prequel trilogy in Clone Wars has shown that the Republic was not infallible and was so vulnerable to corruption that Palpatine could turn it into an autocratic dictatorship. But the key fundamental failing of everything reacting to it was to assume it was the fault of the dark side and the Sith gumming up the works. But more savvy viewers know that the Republic is largely capitalist and the Senate is in the pocket of corporations. The Phantom Menace shows this by showing a corporation having representation in government. It's like Amazon getting to elect its own representatives. This is the system working as intended. And the Jedi serve the Republic, which is already corrupt and do not seek anything as drastic as the Republic being reformed or rebuilt from the ground up. And the Galactic Civil War trilogy is about bringing the Republic back, which then immediately fell into the same hole it had been in before, allowing the First Order to build power undisturbed. This should be the light side of the Force at its worst. Its approach to calm and deliberation and patience is inherently in support of the status quo, in support of peace in a very tenuous sense. Coincidentally, what's the first line of the Sith Code? Peace is a lie, there is only passion. The biggest crime to the Jedi is giving a shit, caring, wanting to do something. The Jedi inherently support the status quo, and the first thing a good story should do is disrupt the status quo. Peace might be a goal for everyone, but not all peace is created equal. I said this in my Encanto video that in a lot of cases, keeping the peace means keeping quiet and not acknowledging a problem because it might be disruptive or inconvenient. Peace was Palpatine's goal.
Once more, the Sith will rule the galaxy. And we shall have peace. The Republic will be reorganized into the First Galactic Empire for a safe and secure society.
Palpatine's idea of peace is keeping the iron boot on the galaxy through force, fear, and tyranny. It's peace to some, who are in a position where they can ignore it and won't be hurt by it, but turn over the rock and you will see anything but peace. Sorry, I forgot. What's the first line of the Sith Code? Peace is a lie! The funny thing is that the writers of the original KOTOR clearly meant the Sith Code to be this declaration of evil, the opposite of the Jedi Code in every way. But it's clear nobody really thought about what those words mean, because to me, when I hear the very first line of the Sith Code, my thought goes to,
I think you're confusing peace with quiet.
Which is of course a dark paraphrasing of a similar line from the letter from Birmingham jail.
But the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice.
That comparison completely changes the Sith Code, particularly the part about the breaking of chains. The Jedi Code says that passion leads to the dark side, but the Sith Code refutes this, saying that it's those very passions that make us human, that make us empathetic, that make us care about other people, that make us look at a riot and see not peasants causing chaos and disrupting order, but people who have had enough of an aloof regime that cares nothing for them. Star Wars has always struggled with this. It's always struggled with the fallacy of equating one act of violence with another. It suggests that killing a war criminal is inherently the same as slaughtering children, in the same way that an aloof centrist tacitly supporting the status quo would look at people of color rioting over the unchecked and sanctioned slaughter of innocent people by the police as being the same as a pack of neo-Nazis rioting over election fraud that does not exist and has never existed. That is the equivalency that Star Wars makes all the time. The notion that anger, even justified anger, can turn a good person evil is both one, inherent to Star Wars' morality, and two, completely fucking untrue. The same equivocacy that has always been made by centrist white people for the last 100 years, and it's an equivalency that must be broken. The notion that being angry about something is itself an act of evil, the sin of wrath. Kind of like that one season of Legend of Korra, Star Wars' light side, dark side conflict has always been Christianity filtered through the lens of Eastern philosophy. I've seen people compare the Force to yin and yang, for instance, but one problem with that comparison is that yang isn't actually supposed to be evil. Good and evil are psychological constructs. They only exist in the context of our society, but they don't exist in nature. The Force is a natural thing produced by life and death around it, and therefore the dark side is just as natural and benign. Is a predator killing something for food evil? Is a wildfire evil? Whether you think they are or not, removing predators from an ecosystem can very easily cause it to collapse, and wildfires leave plenty of fertile soil behind in their wake. It's a part of nature, it's a necessary part of nature, and in the same way that a dead, rotting corpse feeds animals and insects and fertilizes the soil for new foliage, life and death that feeds new life is part of that cycle. The dark side is not evil, it is as necessary and central to the galaxy as death itself. Of course, the comparison to yin and yang with the Force isn't really a good one. Technically, in canon, there is no light side of the Force, there is only the Force, and the dark side is a corruption of it. But even that is only true in a few cases. In reality, the Force is different depending on the writer. Different Star Wars stories have presented the Force in different ways over the last few decades.
But you must admit, it's hardly the Sith approach.
I've grown far stronger working beside her than I ever could have become through treachery.
Intriguing. I suppose the Sith Code never specifically calls for the usurpation of the Master by the apprentice, merely the pursuit of greater power.
Precisely. It's only natural that the strongest should lead, but the goal should be strength, not necessarily leadership. If one is truly strong, leadership comes inevitably.
It doesn't matter how you justify it. Fear, anger, hate? Those aren't things to aspire to.
I don't aspire to them. I conquer them. I wield them. No different from your lightsaber.
I don't enjoy using my lightsaber. No Jedi should.
And yet, I've never seen you without it.
You never will.
I'm flattered.
They need to do this just so we can have more catty Jedi-Sith philosophy discussions. I know George Lucas never liked the idea of the dark side being morally ambiguous and not pure evil, but he's gone from Star Wars now. And even while he controlled it, that didn't stop people from writing stories about the dark side. And I know the prevailing canon attitude is that the Force is the Force and the dark side is the corruption of it, but the simple reality is, that's boring. Like, putting aside that it comes from a philosophically, politically, and ideologically stagnant place, it's just boring to have a world where anger and passion makes you evil, where giving a shit makes you a bad person. That's South Park rhetoric. I've talked about it before, but there is an army of people who love to decry both sides of any conflict as the same or two sides of the same coin, entirely because it's easier than thinking about anything. It requires no work and lets you think you're smart for not picking a side.
Good guys, bad guys, made up words. It's all a machine, partner. Live free, don't join.
Star Wars is almost perfectly poised for those people, because outside of the things most people haven't heard of, it presents a world where apathy, passivity, and dispassionate support of the status quo are good, and passion, drive, and caring about anything is evil. It might not be exactly what Lucas thought. Lucas no doubt believed that resisting fascist autocracy was a good thing, but it has been the sinister undercurrent of Star Wars for quite some time. Ironically, the character in Star Wars who most perfectly embodies the Sith Code is Leia Organa. Leia is someone who, twice now, saw a growing threat to the galaxy that many others were keen to ignore. Both the Empire's tyranny was ignored by the oligarchs of the Old Republic, who happily enjoyed position of power, and the First Order was ignored by the Republic, who just didn't want war. But Leia gave a shit. Leia couldn't stand by and let innocent people be hurt just because her ivory tower was peaceful. Peace is a lie. There is only passion. So Leia joined the rebellion and later formed the Resistance, attracting other people to the cause and motivating the galaxy. Her passion, her drive to do something about a grave injustice, inspired and rallied others to her cause. Through passion, I gain strength. Bringing people to your cause also brings funds, weapons, ships, the resources that people already had, and committing to the cause. Through strength, I gain power. And through that inspiration, managed to topple the Death Star twice, destroyed Starkiller Base, destroyed the Supremacy, and destroyed the Eternal Fleet. Through power, I gained victory. And it's that victory that loosened the iron grip of the Empire and First Order, freeing the galaxy from the iron boot of an oppressive regime. Through victory, my chains are broken. The Sith Code is interesting because you can see where good people and bad people interpret it. A Sith like Palpatine no doubt sees strength and power as internal, growing into a more powerful Force user, becoming invincible. His master, Darth Plagueis, sought to become immortal through the Force. But a good person, a Sith with altruistic goals, would see strength and power not coming from within, but from the outside, through rallying people, building trust and friendships, becoming something that inspires others, and becoming more powerful the more of the galaxy you unite and bring together.
I don't need a weapon. My friends are my power.
This idea decouples good and evil from the Force, and suggests that good people and bad people use both the light and dark sides in different ways. Palpatine wasn't evil because he was Sith. He was evil because he was a career politician with delusions of grandeur. In real life, you don't need space magic to be that kind of evil bastard. But in order to be a good person, an altruistic person, you need to care. You need passion. The dark side of the Force is still the Force. Deeper, murkier, less explored, but it is still the Force. It's not the Force that makes you good or evil, it's you. The Force is simply a tool you use for those ends. As it exists in this week's canon, the dark side is boring. This isn't my interpretation of canon, this is me saying it would be better if the dark side wasn't 100% pure evil all the time, if we had heroic characters using it, if we framed evil not by the dark side, but by things that actually make people evil. But it would also mean that it'd be harder to justify redeeming space Nazis when you don't have the dark side to blame their actions on, and instead have to unpack the real reasons they fell to to space fascism, and that's a concept that's going to bounce off Disney like gummy bears off a yoga ball, isn't it? I suppose some could come up with the counterpoint that what I'm essentially suggesting is that Star Wars needs to be more woke, and, well, yes, that is what I'm suggesting. That'd be an objectively good thing. I mean, you can't be a family soap opera about destroying fascism and the inherent corruption and auto-cannibalistic rot of capitalist democracy, and then turn around and decide you want to be apolitical. It's a galaxy where slavery exists, and maybe it's time we stopped ignoring that and stopped suggesting that not being angry about it is what the good guys do, because my idea of a good guy in Star Wars is, well, let's just say incompatible with that idea. Anyway, I hope you have a lovely day, and may the 4th serve you well.